Oops, I accidentally stopped my recording, so I'll have to recombine them later.
To this place on the internet. I think it's going to be okay, but I'm not really a businessman. Money never turned my crank, except for a while. I left Time Life and joined Cantor Fitzgerald as a Russian consultant, working in the World Trade Center. That was the high life, all right. There was money everywhere. Lots of stress, but the brokers were better than the journalists. They didn't take their jobs away with them on weekends. And they played as hard as they worked. I had a good time there. Then, when I was on vacation one day, the plane flew right into my office and killed everyone. The ripples of 9/11 are still being felt in every part of this country. Even over a coffee outside a quiet motel in South Dakota, where a mother and daughter are laughing into a computer camera at a joke being told 6,000 miles away, and where an expatriate Russian Israeli is staring into the distance, thinking of the bodies of his friends in New York burning like those of his friends years before in Lebanon. Once again.
So, just want to let you know that I have a relative that is a fairly famous journalist. So that's his label, right? That he's respected for in family circles. And my father is upset one time, saying, "I don't know what to tell people what you do for a living, and you must earn a living because you're not in jail or in a hospital, or you seem to not be living under a bridge." And so I gave him the last letter of reference I had, which was as a journalist. And but if you're not like able to consistently prove this and have your income or asset level increase, people are confused. So I have many different skill sets of things I've done, am doing, and will learn to do later because I'm a lifelong learner running on an operating system that has already passed a particular tipping point where the foundation that it has now can keep building in very solid long-term ways, right? And even in ways that will reduce significantly the chances that I suffer from brain-related ailments in the future, if you want to say this in this way, or dementia or anything else like this. And that has caused me to have a very resilient brain in the sense that it can handle hardships for what it's put under. I'm not saying I can ride a motorcycle and crash it without a helmet. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when it comes to nutrients or medicines or hydration or things like that is what I was saying. So I'm going to finish this, but you guys do realize that the very basic things you miss is that war breeds more war. Making weapons breeds more making weapons and more war, and this is the obvious. And you also miss the obvious that I don't know anybody who takes the time to understand the titles I've given myself, therefore tries to find labels that are simpler, such as journalist. And of course, it's based on the schemas that they have of what a journalist is. It's not necessarily how I define it or how I have done it and may continue to do it. In my own ways as an independent that doesn't really publish anywhere other than my own YouTube channel, for example, or just sending it to somebody by email what I wrote or what I produced. So that's who I am, but you guys don't realize you suffer from so much HSD that you get like a headache or frustrations or, into big judgments of how I live my life as compared to yours, because it's not simple to label me. It's simpler to label me by having a 1-minute interaction with me. Anything longer just gives you guys a headache, I think, because, an Homo sapien is complex, and you don't like that, which makes you embrace HSD even more.
And he was clear of the flames, and once again the impact broke him. I went to pieces. There was no job to go to, no more Cantor, no more World Trade Center. I drove a cab for a while. I would go to my dacha, you'd call it a cottage, north of the city, where I had no amenities, just the woods, the stream, and I loved the solitude. New York was over for me. That part of my life was over. I just wanted my wife and her daughter to come here so I could start again. When they finally arrived, ready for our new life, I went looking for a way out of New York. No bosses yelling at me. No commuting for an hour and a half just to get to work to be yelled at, then driving home again. No high buildings. I found this motel and I love it. We can make a good life here. The noises inside have stopped, and we both notice as we sip the coffee. The call to Israel is over, and Mike purses his lips again. She's not so sure. She was a teacher of art history at the university in Novosibirsk, and she had a full life, the life of an intellectual. But here she doesn't speak English so well, and it's hard for her to make friends. She has such conversation, such life, but not in English, not yet. We came here, and I saw all this openness, all this air to breathe and space to live, but she said, "Why did you bring me from one Siberia to another?" But this is not Siberia, this is South Dakota. There's a lot here if you want to look for it. Not everybody loves the country over the city. Minneapolis or Denver or Winnipeg, which are the closest large cities to Lemmon, Mike's wife would find others like her, but Minneapolis is 500 miles back down the road. We're less than a 2-hour drive here from the geographic center of the United States, but sometimes when you're right in the middle of something, it means everything that matters is elsewhere. The morning's pressing on, and although Mike invites me to stay another night and drink vodka with him and meet his family, I'm on a tight schedule and must leave. I'll come here on the way back, though, and tell him so. Guess that means I'll catch up with Stacey, too. That will be good.
Oh, Stacey. Don't worry. Don't worry, he can control his hormones.
He says, I do not think we'll be full. They told me when they sold me this motel that it would always be full, but it's not been so, and I think they were not so honest. They just wanted to retire and leave. But we don't need much now. Perhaps in the winter we'll close up and go south for a while. My wife might like that. We stand and say good.
I wanted to say to you guys that not needing a lot in life makes you less dangerous to yourselves, to your families, to your cultures, to your nations, to your species, to this planet. But not needing as much to live is not at all saying that you've raised enough money for retirement or that you have enough assets or this kind of security. What I'm talking about is human thinking tools, and you are not a big consumer of money-related products, that you enjoy quality of life, interactions, developing additional human thinking tools, advancing your understanding of things, having interactions of social creature needs of quality. This is what I'm talking about. Not needing as much to live a happy life is the simple things, which is not going to live in a cave. Although it would be an interesting experience for a week, once a year, for most people to do something like this. But what I'm talking about is the basics of what are the needs of what your DNA tells you, which is healthy food and access to water, and also stimulating interactions of quality for your lifelong learner brains. That's what I'm talking about. You don't need 2-3 jobs for that. If you think you have a hard time living your life and you have 2-3 jobs, there's something, there's some pretty serious things you need to ask yourself in your one life that you have to live about whether, you're on the right kind of path.
By with a smile and a firm handshake, man to man. Turning to leave, I remember the beer bottles in the room and the sunglasses on the desk. Oh, Stacey left her sunglasses in my room last night when we got back from the campground. They're on the writing desk. I'll let her know, he replies, almost as an afterthought. I'd have thought she'd missed them this morning.
Now, Stacey is a girl who had colored her hair, so he's not even certain if she's a blonde or brunette or a redhead.
Sounds very strong today. The Zen writers left after breakfast and made this into a traveling day. In the book, Sylvia Sutherland was plainly impatient with the two Persigs, for she wanted to get out of the heat and didn't want to deal with a whining kid. Persig, on the other hand, was slowing everything down because of concern for the condition of his rear tire, which was wearing more quickly than expected on the hot pavement. It's the little descriptions of Sylvie here that she probably disliked the most. Not cruel or vindictive, but certainly not complimentary. Several years later, when Persig finished writing Zen and the Art, he showed drafts of the manuscript to the people mentioned in the book. "It really isn't me," said Sylvia, as she described in a letter to the Deweeses after they had read their copy. Sylvia was kind of thrown by the way I switched everything around. Chris was really shook, so I guess you probably have some of the same feelings. I explained to them that the story isn't really about them. They are like a Greek chorus, there to oh and ah and give a semblance of reality to a tale that seems always to ride at the very edge of incredibility and needs all the help it can get.
One more little micro chapter to go, so less than 2 minutes, I think. The only thing he had to go by on the real color of hair of Stacey was her eyebrows. Okay? So again, a man who can control his hormones. I don't want to give too much away.
But even so, many readers who accepted the tale as gospel couldn't see this, and to them Sylvia and John will forever be remembered as shallow, two-dimensional. Chris will always be that whining boy on the back of the bike. Nancy and Ted got off lightly. They're barely mentioned and never named. The sun is not so ferocious as yesterday, but the wind is the strongest yet. I'm back up into North Dakota already and thinking of the lonely people in Lemmon, people who don't deserve to be lonely, people who will thrive if they can only find friends to understand them. This was a